Right, yeah, I did, that's right. So yeah, I'm Toby Thouless, I'm a Safeguarding Adults Practice Consultant. I cover Southern locality, so I do recognise some faces around the room. I've worked in the MASH for a few years before working in Southern locality, and I've also covered the Northern area. In terms of who I am, I've worked in social care for 13, 14 years, something like that now, so long enough not to call myself a newbie anymore, unfortunately. My colleague Joe, do you want to just this is Joe Cambridge, who covers the Western locality, so if any of you are out in the West, you may have come across Joe, or may come across Joe at some point. Just for my sort of knowledge as we do the talk today, so there's people from pretty much all walks. So have we got people from residential homes, nursing homes, yeah, domiciliary care, yeah, day services, yeah, that's fine. But yeah, just social, kind of from all walks. So the purpose of today, Walter Lloyd-Smith is our board manager, who was going to come today, but unfortunately he's not available, so he asked if anyone would step in. So me and Joe volunteered for some obscure reason. He's asked us, what we're going to cover is a bit of making safeguarding personal. So I'm just going to go through some bits and bobs about making safeguarding personal, the process, some of the kind of the sort of thinking behind it. As we go through, I'm more than happy for people to ask questions. There'll be a bit at the end if people want to ask questions, but as I'm going through, please feel free to interrupt me and ask any questions you might have. So, making safeguarding personal. I looked at there you go. So, yes, it's the, I'm looking at the, well, we're having a look at, there's a report that's come out, Making Safeguarding Personal for Commissioners and Providers of Health and Social Care, and how we can do it well. On the presentation, which will be sent round to you, or the link's on here, so feel free to have a read of it. It's not that long, it's about 18 pages, but it's sort of quite spread out, so it's not a particularly arduous read, but it can be quite helpful. I'm going to try and pull out some of the points that it covers. There isn't a clock this way, so I'm going to keep looking at my watch, not because I'm bored, just because I don't want to run over too long. So, put simply, making safeguarding personal is much more than safeguarding inquiries. Mine and Joe's team, we tend to get involved when there's a section 42 and there's a formal safeguarding inquiry, but making safeguarding personal, we all know safeguarding is about prevention and empowering people and working in partnership, all things that can be done to avoid, hopefully, the need for safeguarding referrals in the first place. But that requires a lot of joint working, a lot of good communication, interagency communication, and I know there are times when that doesn't work as well as we would like. There are barriers between different agencies. I know I try and say in the South that if people have got queries, I will try and speak to people. I'm more than happy for people to speak to me directly. Christine's gonna put my email address on the information I think that comes out to you afterwards, so you can ping me an email if you've got a general question. Obviously, if you're raising a safeguarding referral, you need to raise a safeguarding referral, but if you've got a general question, and I know I recognise some faces of people I've managed to speak to and stuff about that beforehand. So, making safeguarding personal is about, like I say, it's about a personalised approach that enables safeguarding to be done with people, not to people, and it's trying not to just take people through a process, but about a kind of a meaningful understanding of what goals people want to achieve and how we're going to make that happen in a kind of positive environment. So these are phrases we're all familiar with. This isn't new. This is, as a lot of social care, the thinking has been around for a long time. It's just how we express it and how we make it work. So, we've got these lovely new laptops that I'm not very good at using, but I'm getting used to them as we go. So, the first point, I guess the report focuses on is the team around the person. We get safeguarding referrals all the time, and actually you guys, working with people with care and support needs, people with the appearance of need, you guys are often the first person that has that contact. You guys are often the person that someone makes a disclosure to, or shares some information, or you observe something. So you're really key in how we engage with service users, how we engage with you guys, and how we make it work. a lot of the stuff you do, I've touched on prevention already. A lot of what you do is prevention and engagement between different partners and different groups. I'm waffling, so I'm just going to read this, make sure I don't. So I guess looking at the diagram. Oh, sorry, I thought I went forward. Did I go back?
Yeah.
Oh, I did. Sorry, that threw me then. So looking at the diagram, we're all familiar with this. We've got, we've got our person. So these are all the different responsibilities. This isn't meant to be a comedy, sorry. These are all the different factors that affect us all. So I kind of think in this sense, the person is the person we're working with. You guys are pretty much in direct contact. So a lot of the time you have much more of the contact. Social workers, we have contact when we go out, we might see someone do an assessment, telephone conversations, but you guys are seeing people daily, weekly, regularly. But that all fits within those organisational factors and structures. So you guys, from a safeguarding perspective, how often do you have conversations about, I need to report something, I'm concerned about something, or someone's told me something that I'm worried about? But also you have, that's about how you share that information with us. But the key bit here, I guess, is the legal framework and the policy and oversight, and I think that's where making safeguarding personal comes in. We all have responsibilities, don't we? I know people have said to me, when I've gone out to see people, I'm going to tell you this thing, but you've got to promise not to tell anyone. I don't know if you've been in that position before, and you have to say to that person, you have to say, I can listen to you, but I can't promise I'm not going to have to tell someone if you're going to disclose something to me. And it's that legislative kind of framework, I guess, that puts us in that position. And so it's from a making safe and personal perspective, it's about having that, being able to have that honest dialogue with people, and being able to say, I'm going to listen to you, I'm going to support you, I'm doing what I can to help you, but I can't make false promises. And it can be really difficult. But also in this idea of you guys at that direct practice bit and at that organisational bit, you guys are the guys that are most likely to be in that zone. And I found it very hard sometimes. And also you'll see things that people have maybe normalised or don't even recognise as issues. Some examples I was thinking of is, like domestic violence. We've got a lot of domestic violence referrals. If you're caring for people in their home or in care homes, partners come in, couples come in, you see things, and actually you might have a concern about domestic violence. The person themselves might not recognise that it's domestic violence. Process-wise for us, if we raise the safeguarding referral, one of the things we'll always say to the person is, what do you want to achieve? What do you want to get from this safeguarding interaction? What do you want from it being here? It's a very difficult question to ask someone who doesn't recognise the abuse, who says, there isn't anything. So there are a lot of competing factors here, I guess. There's responsibilities for us to try and work with people and keep them safe. So sometimes making safeguarding personal fortune can be very difficult, and it can be very challenging conversations that we all have to have collectively. And I think that's where understanding your role, knowing what you need to do, knowing how to raise issues, knowing your boundaries to a certain extent. Actually sometimes it's better to walk away from a situation and go and get some advice than it is to pile into a situation and potentially make something much more difficult. Is it 25-2 I've got to finish? Right, I'm good. I'm about on time. So, from here, have we got people who are managers and leaders as well? Have we got care staff? Have we got care assistants as well, or is it more of a managing sort of room? Right, good. That's what I was hoping for. So, key to getting good safeguarding practice out into the localities and being provided to the people of Norfolk is that organisational leadership and culture. Safeguarding, the Care Act gives a much clearer guidance, and to me, I believe, so the Care Act gives a much clearer definition of what safeguarding is and what is expected of us. I mean, the legislation before the Care Act, you could kind of pick about 4 or 5 different ones and have different expectations and different language in it. So the Care Act did a really good job of, I think, of trying to standardise it and make it easier to understand. But it also puts on us some quite clear and non-negotiable sets of values. And I think me and Jo were talking earlier, and she was giving a really good example in care provision, is you've got some really specific things you have to do. And actually, in terms of the provision of your care, say someone needs care, someone in a residential setting or something needs regular support to turn to avoid getting pressure areas, because you're worried about, because essentially you're worried about that person's skin integrity, but also there'll be issues around neglect and concerns there. It's about having a really clear discussion with an individual maybe who doesn't want to engage in that. I don't want you to help me to reposition. I don't want to sit comfortably. I want to sit this way. And I've got a grade 3 or a grade 4 pressure and I don't want your help. It's about you as providers maybe having to sit down with that person and say, look, you really need to do this because these are the risks. This is what's going to happen. You're going to be in a much worse position if we don't support you. And that can, again, like I said, that can be very difficult. And I mean, the big one for me is about learning from experience. Going out and doing Section 42 safeguarding inquiries. We don't want that to be a stick. We don't want safeguarding to be a stick to hit people over. Press the button. Yeah, we don't want safeguarding to be a stick which we go out and threatening people with or providers with. And I get really frustrated if I hear people phone me up and say, oh, so-and-so said I've got to call, a professional's visited and said I've got to do this, or it's going to be safeguarding, or I've got to do, or if I don't do this, they're going to make a referral for safeguarding. If you're getting that experience as a provider, that's not how safeguarding should work. Safeguarding should be a collaborative piece of work, and it should be about supporting people. It's not about blaming people. It's not about getting people in trouble, but it is about taking responsibility. So, I've made mistakes in my work. Anyone who's worked in care would have at some point made a mistake and got something wrong. And it's about trying to take responsibility for that, learn from it, improve the service. So the example is a case I had not long ago, actually, that I thought was a really good example of this. We had a care provider that provided support for people with mental health issues. It was a secure unit, and this particular patient believed that they had lots of bugs inside them. And one of the things they would do is they would order online pet flea remedies, and then when they'd get them, they'd try and eat them and consume them. And this particular day, this person had bought something online. They'd gone online and they bought something from a pet shop, and it was delivered to the service. And the carer, being really helpful and supportive, was like, brilliant, this person's got some post. I'm going to support them to open their post, and they're going to do all this stuff. So they opened the post, and they didn't register what was going on. And this patient then drinks down their flea medicine. And quite rightly, a Section 42 inquiry was raised because that shouldn't have happened. What the provider did, which I thought was really positive, is they recognised this staff member was, committed and well-meaning and conscientious and did make a heck of a mistake. But they recognised that person wasn't going to make that mistake again, and they recognised that person wanted to make that right. And that person ended up being like a champion to do with the postal system in that service. So when they stood up at the team meeting and talked about it, they redid the posters that went in the staff room to show what the process is for if there's concerns about posts coming in. And actually, there's a service that, from a safeguarding perspective, I feel much more confident that they're not going to make that mistake again, because they've learned from that mistake, they've taken the responsibility from that. And actually, they've built up a staff member who's going to be more competent, you would hope, than they had previously been. And I know there's a real pressure on providers, isn't it? Often there's you guys call in with a safeguarding. I thought I pressed it again. You guys call in with a safeguarding query, and the first thing we say is, what have you done about the staff member? If you say it's about a staff member, and there's that pressure to, I've got to suspend them, or I've got to get rid of them, or I've got to do this, that, and the other, or an agency, or something like that. And it's about having that discussion about what is the best thing to do. So that can be suspension, and often is, but it doesn't mean that person, we don't necessarily want that person cast out of social care forevermore because they've made an error. It's about learning from those mistakes. One of the, I've got to get a quick plug in here because I promised Walter I would do it. There is a Safeguarding Champions group. Has anyone signed up to that? Or anyone heard of that? Yeah? There's a Safeguarding Champions group which is set up to, offer support and some information and advice to providers. Christine if you email Christine, she'll be able to send you the dates. I think the next one's in January? It's a group where we talk about safeguarding issues and just try and offer some confidence that you as providers can take back to your organisations and maybe build on. You can be bored by me at that group as well in January. But it is generally, I think, a really helpful group to try and get involved in and share experiences with different providers where you can. So you don't have to all relearn the same thing. Right, so I'm going to move on. The workforce development and support. So this, I've kind of touched on this in the last one in terms of organisational, how you guys work. It's about, this is about that preventative part of safeguarding, about how you invest in staff, supervision, mentoring, the example I gave of the lady, of the carer who let the patient take the medicine, the animal, what do you call it? It is medicine, I guess. But anyway, that example, it was about they used that and they brought that into their team meetings, they brought that into their informal supervisions, and they used that as something positive and not as a bashing tool to kind of make someone feel bad. And it's about discussing that feedback. So from the local authority's perspective, and I know staff don't always feel this happens as well as it could do, you should, if you've referred a concern about something, you should get feedback about that, about what the outcome is. You should get some information back from the Section 42 safeguarding inquiry, and then that would be good stuff to share with your team and say, on your team agenda, on your team meeting agenda, have a safeguarding heading and any feedback from any safeguardings we have. What have we learned? What's happened? What are we doing better than we were before? All that kind of stuff. And the other bit, I guess, is that sometimes does get sort of pushed to the side a bit, I guess, is trying to involve people as much as possible. People with support needs, trying to involve them in part of the process. So, what input do they have into how the service looks and how is that supported and how are they listened to? I know we, like with the local authority, we try and do that as well, but it's obviously something that can always be built on and always be improved on. So that was basically that report that you've got the link to on the first. I'm conscious I'm running out of time. I did promise, the other thing I promised Walter, has anyone, I'm assuming you've all had to make safeguarding referrals at some point or another, has anyone had the opportunity to use the online safeguarding referral form yet?
That's usually the one that they refer you to when you phone up.
Oh, they do now. So some of the guide, I think it's not entirely clear on the website because I think it does suggest it's only for certain care providers, but everyone can refer to it. Individuals themselves can log on and refer, or family members or things like that. But this is, we've noticed an increase in the number of online referrals we've got. And I don't know what your experience is, but from ours they seem to come through quicker, which is going to be a positive, I think, for everybody involved. They are obviously not for urgent cases, so where you've got something specific going on right then that you're worried about someone's safety, you're going to call it in, or you're going to call in using your phone. But where it's maybe like two people in your service who've had an altercation, maybe nothing serious, it's kind of been dealt with, but there is an issue there, it's that kind of referral. But it's, if you go on the first time and ask you to sign up an account, and then you can submit it. So I would recommend trying to do that. And obviously, Christine was talking about the e-brokerage thing. Everything's very much going down a technology road, much more than it used to. I've always figured that I was quite enthusiastic about technology and IT, and I feel more and more like I'm turning into a dead end, being grumpy and pointing at the computer and it doesn't work properly. I've realised I've skipped over a slide. So that was the thing, I guess, just to say about the online thing. Any feedback about that would be very graciously received. Obviously, you'll have my email on here, and on the last slide, I've got Walter's contact details as well, so you can feedback to there, which would be helpful. Hang on, I have skipped too far ahead, so I need to go back. Oh, yeah. Does anyone recognise this? This has been banded around. So the only point I just wanted to make about this, about making safeguarding personal, is process-wise, it's a theme that should run through the whole process. It's not like a bit of the process, like now we're going to do the making safeguarding personal section. It's not like that, it's a process that runs through the whole thing. So you should, as referrers, you should potentially get some feedback here about what's going on. Depending who you are, that feedback is proportionate. So if you're Bob from next door who's phoning up because they're worried about the neighbour, your feedback might be, thank you very much. But as providers, if you're involved in that care support, you should have an idea of what's going on and what the next steps are. And that obviously goes through the whole thing. So this will be the full inquiry. This is a discussion at the beginning where we talk about what's going to happen and what the plan is. Yeah, so.
My previous setting, I was in an dementia home, and we've had 6 safeguardings going on at one time, and more often than not, when we called to put a referral through, we were asked to bring back the next day, because we're too busy, and we never hardly got callbacks to have the outcome, because you can see we had to chase.
That shouldn't, is that still going on now?
Yes.
Yeah, because that shouldn't happen. There is on our processes, there is a section where before it's closed, it's asked what was the feedback and who was it given to. So it should explicitly answer that. I guess it's difficult without getting into specifics, but yeah, if you do find yourself having to chase, like I said, please feel free to give me that feedback, because I can feed that back to the relevant managers on a case-by-case basis. But the process from Norfolk County Council's perspective is clear. You should be given some feedback, and you should be given feedback. Yeah, and that's something we definitely need to work on. Yeah. So, no, I absolutely get that shouldn't be how it's happened. So if you let me know, if you give me some examples, I can go and take that away and pass that on, because you should get, and sometimes it isn't a whole lot of feedback, is it? It's just, you just want to know. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Still waiting to hear, I'm actually starting to speak with another piece of work, and she's going to get back to me, and she's going to
yeah. So that's what shouldn't be happening. So if you feedback any examples to me, I'm happy to pass them on and to chase them up for you. So yeah, so sorry I can't do any specifics today, but yeah, let me know.
I know we recently did a survey, they just safeguarding, just put a survey out.
Yes, that's a very good point, and I hadn't completely forgotten about that. So yes, do fill in the questionnaire. It's on the, hold on. It's on the NSAB website, is the questionnaire. So, you know, that's the kind of thing that does help us feedback and try and improve the service. So absolutely, get stuck in and fill that survey in. Because yeah, that would be very helpful. And that goes to board, and that's on the strategic side, so they would feed that back into us, the operational side, about something that we need to work on and we need to be more focused on if that's an issue. So that's pretty much it. So